Brilliant.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So we can't actually see you, but thank you so much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to be invited to speak here. We at New Citizen Project have done quite a lot of work in nature and climate, which we'll talk about in a bit in a minute, including helping to develop the People's Plan for Nature. And we're very passionate about helping organizations create the right conditions for everyone to participate in restoring nature and taking action for climate. Just to say today, throughout our presentation, please feel free to leave us any questions using the Q&A. We'll try not to get too distracted by the chat, so maybe if you use the Q&A, we can have a look at that towards the end and answer any of your questions. So we're here today to talk about membership. We believe that membership, and in our experience shows that membership can be a really powerful way of kind of driving that participation, that kind of mass participation, and also building long-term relationships with people who share in and support your mission. And of course, a crucial part of kind of growing and cultivating membership in that way is communication. I think our provocation today is to go deeper into how environmental organizations think about members, speak to members, and kind of frame the whole idea of membership. We feel that in many cases, there's so much more that membership could be. And the way that we talk about membership is sort of so critical to opening up that potential. I think we'll just get our slides working, and then I'll hand over to my colleague Anna to explain a bit more about who we are.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Oliver, and lovely to be here today. Just a quick introduction to who we are. We are a strategy and innovation company. And we believe that given the opportunity, people can and want to shape the world around them for the better. And we work, we hop on the slide one more. Brilliant. We work across sectors to see how we might see and involve people as citizens, not consumers. So exploring how we might truly involve people in solving our big challenges, whether that be health or heritage or the environment, which, as Oliver says, we've worked a lot in. And we see our role as to work with organisations of all shapes and sizes to build the belief, skills and confidence to work in participatory ways. We know that kind of working with people as citizens requires different skills in facilitation and co-production and co-design. And so all of our work is around how do we support organisations and being able to build that muscle in how they work with people. I'm going to just share a little bit around the kind of the central idea that sits at the heart of all our work. So we call ourselves the New Citizen Project, and we talk about subjects, consumers, and citizens because our view is that at any one time, there is a dominant story about the individual and society, a kind of implicit or sometimes very explicit narrative about the role that we are supposed to play. And for much of human history and still definitely present today, we see that role was a subject, that kind of left-hand column, where as individuals, things were done to you. Your role was to obey, to kind of receive what was given to you. And the role of institutions and the organizations around you was to command and say, this is the way of doing things. And your role was to obey and accept that. And that was a dominant story for much of the 20th century. But over the course of the two world wars, we see that story start to break apart and a new story appear. And that's that middle column, that the story of the consumer. And there we see people who had given everything to king and country weren't content to just obey anymore and receive what was given. I mean, coming back from those world-changing events, so women who've been liberated from the home and wanted more choice and say in their lives, people started to say, actually, there's a different role. I want something different for my lives, and I see a different role for us to play. And so we see the role of the consumer start becoming the right way to behave, where things are done for you, where our lives have growing independence from the big institutions that had governed them, where we don't just obey, but instead we can make demands on what we need. And we have agency to choose between options. And the role of organizations in that consumer story is to really serve those needs, to listen to what people say they want and to create products that serve those needs. And there's a lot that's been really, really liberating from that consumer era and that consumer story. But that too is starting to break apart. And in large part because it no longer feels very commensurate with the challenges that we face. We're not going to be able to buy our way out of an ecological crisis. So we need to think differently about the ways that we see ourselves and involve people in solving our really big challenges. And so that's what we're all about, that right-hand column, that kind of new story, one that we call the citizen story. And as citizens, our role is to contribute not just our money, but our resources, our networks, our agency, our empathy towards making things better. In a citizen story, things are done with citizens, not to or for them. We're not dependent or independent, but interdependent, because we know it's in everyone's best interest. The goal isn't to serve just what you need. It's not just to serve what someone else needs. It's to see the links between them. And we participate and we create. We don't just demand and choose. And the role of organizations in that citizen story is to facilitate, not to dictate or to serve. I think what we found in our work with a lot of mission-based organizations is that could be quite a challenging shift to make, because it can be tempting when you are so strongly led by a cause to cast yourself as the hero. Kind of you're taking on that challenge, you're taking on that problem, and people's role is to support you in solving that issue. But instead, in a citizen story, it's not, your role isn't to be that hero, but it's to position other people and to empower other people to be able to make change alongside yourselves. And that's kind of communications wise, one of the big shifts to make is to really put people in the story with you as people who have agency to solve these really big challenges. I'm just going to take a moment to play this story a bit through the environmental movement and see how it plays out there. I think we can kind of see these stories definitely play out. So in the late 19th and early 20th century, kind of we see that growing realization and organization behind the need to protect wildlife, kind of coast and countryside, the sort of start of some of the environmental movement in the UK. And we see, organizations have obviously done lots of good, like the National Trust and RSPB being established. But we'd still say that these causes primarily remain the preserve of the upper and middle classes, and there wasn't much role for the greater public to play in protecting that land or campaigning or being active on behalf of that cause. After the First and Second World War, I think you can see that there's that greater demand for access to national landscapes, and we see things like the 1949 National Parks Act preserving and creating access to swathes of the countryside for people. So we start to see that kind of consumer story coming through, that people are starting to demand this is a benefit that everyone should be able to have access to. I want to have that as part of my life. And we see the government and other organizations respond to that, and environmental organizations too kind of growing their supporter bases from the reserve of a few thousand to millions of people. And in that context, membership kind of starts to become more than a sort of a passive active altruism into being a kind of an active visitor or benefit pass that kind of offers value for money and enjoyment, sort of sometimes first and foremost. And I guess we'd say that both of these stories have brought so much progress, and we've protected large areas of the countryside and grown support for environmental organizations and the movement as a whole. But again, we'd say these stories are breaking down, and it's time for sort of a new story in this context, because despite growing support, we know that we're not really changing the dial on the environment. And with a few success stories aside, we've seen nature plummet over the last 60 years. So and I think we can see as well in the rise of more action-orientated organizations like Earth First in the 90s, or kind of Extinction Rebellion more recently, there's a sort of growing frustration with the status quo and a desire for greater agency to be shared among people. And so we'd say, yeah, that citizen story is here, and we're seeing it really emerge through the consideration that environmental organizations are now giving to how they involve and empower people. Initiative like the People's Plan for Nature, which showed national trust WWF and the RSPB coming together to involve people in really setting policy recommendations, a sense that people can really play an active part in shaping what we're asking and what we're doing to protect the wider environment. That's kind of all what we're going to be, that's the context which we're going to be exploring today, how that citizen story might change the way that we communicate with and involve members and supporters is the kind of the subject of what we're going to be going into. So back over to you, Oliver.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Anna. So what does this kind of citizen story that we're describing mean for membership, or how we think about membership? This is a question that we first explored about 10 years ago with our Future of Membership report, which was co-created through a collaborative innovation project with 6 different membership organizations from kind of very, very different sectors. And since then, over the last 10 years, we've worked with over 50 membership organizations to develop the thinking and practice behind this, including kind of nature-based charities like the RSPB. So just in a nutshell, in that report, we set out a new vision for what we call participatory membership. So thinking of membership as a relationship that's rooted in shared purpose, not just a kind of transactional product. So this table here, if it's catching up, kind of sets out the shifts that take place, thank you, when we think of members as citizens rather than consumers. So we recognize that things like value exchange are still very important, but we realize that what people want from membership is not just material benefits. There's an emotional kind of benefit or a sense of belonging and connection and kind of purposefulness that people want from membership on top of the material benefits. The major shift, I think, is moving away from this role, as Anna says, of kind of simply serving members, kind of giving them what they want or doing things for them, towards becoming more of a platform or a facilitator of members taking action for the causes that both you and they care about. So really moving from kind of buying from to buying in, and most of all, kind of moving to that for mode, doing things for people, to doing things with people. So that's the overall idea we have for how membership can be kind of reframed and rethought of in organizations where it might have lapsed into becoming quite kind of consumer and transactional and product driven. So that's the theory. It can be difficult for organizations. So why is it often so difficult for organizations who, even when they want to do this, struggle to do so? We sometimes like to use this simple triangle to explain the challenge organizations face. So if we look at the 3 relationships in this triangle, we often see that organizations put a lot of their organizational resources, like how they're set up, into the left-hand and the right-hand parts of the triangle. So there will be a lot of effort and attention on the relationship between the members in the organization. So you have a membership team or a kind of fundraising team, donations team, working on member income, member attraction, retention, with lots of kind of heavy-duty CRM systems, all that kind of stuff. And then on the other side of the triangle, you have a lot of attention on the mission or the cause, that side of things. So teams and experts who actually know what they're talking about and deliver on the mission. So essentially, one is raising money, one is spending it, and sometimes those teams don't even really talk to each other. But what's often neglected is the base of the triangle. So organizations rarely put as much sort of effort and attention and resource into actually connecting people to the shared cause. So becoming a platform for their participation and giving the members more ways to contribute, kind of building that emotional belonging, building that sense of purpose, building that sense of agency. They route all the agency through the organization. They don't connect the members with the cause directly. And we believe very strongly that, first of all, the shift towards a citizen story requires us to invest in that base of the triangle. We also believe that the more you strengthen the base of the triangle, the more you strengthen the other side of the triangle as well.
And just to play that through with a real example, so some of the team, various of us, have either worked in the National Trust or worked with the National Trust over the last 15 years. And what we've seen is that they've kind of consciously shifted from a very product-based membership to one that's really rooted around a mission. And a lot of that kind of took looking at how the organization was set up. So it wasn't that long ago that the NT had to kind of effectively become two separate organizations. There was a sort of conservation charity working on that kind of national trust to special places access, where half of the staff were really looking after those special places. And there was a visitor attraction business on the other side, which was really about selling the national trust to people. And those two sides of the organizations didn't communicate very much with each other, and they were even kind of physically separated, with one on one floor and one on the other. And so what became that job of changing that was about reorientating that organization, as Oliver says, around that access between people and special places, and kind of putting the National Trust in the service of that relationship. And we saw some really big changes happen as a result of that. I mean, on the kind of sort of surface level of the communication, the whole way that membership was talked about and positioned with members changed. So it went from something that was often talked about as in a very transactional way. So buy now and get 3 months free, or buy now and have the cost of your ticket restored. A lot of that was how it was publicized, sort of bright red posters, all selling it on a very kind of this is the value for money aspects of membership, into now a way of positioning membership which is all about getting people closer to these places they love, and really explicitly positioning people as looking after those places, not supporting the National Trust. It's not thank you for looking after the National Trust. It's always thank you for looking after these special places. Thank you for keeping these places forever for everyone. So members are really cast as people who are acting upon that mission and making that mission possible. And membership was positioned really as about kind of what sat at the heart of this trust, this belief that people need these places, came much more to the fore of how membership is positioned and spoken about, and people are told what good is happening as a result of them being a member. And I guess just to give another example of that, it's kind of that way of thinking helped create one of the Trust's most successful campaigns ever. So 50 Things to Do Before You're 11 3/4 started from the insight that increasingly children were spending more time on screens, less time outside in the outdoors, and a fear about where that would take you and what that means for the well-being of children and what that means for actually the environmental movement as a whole. How can you create that connection with the outdoors early? There's a real fear about it, but that campaign started out as getting outdoors with the National Trust. That was kind of how it was positioned. It was around kind of all about that sort of people National Trust relationship. But when there was the flip to people and special places, that's when people thought, actually, this is really about how do we directly connect children with that sense of adventure and play and possibility the outdoor has. And it became that list that was actually a really nice curation between both sides of the organisation, where rangers and conservators thought about activities that people could do across a range of National Trust places, and that was created into the 50 Things list. And that was one of the longest running and successful campaigns. That sort of positioning 50 Things to Do Before You're 11 3/4 is all around people in special places.
Great, thank you. We're going to ask you in a minute through a interactive exercise to reflect on kind of where your organization or where in your work you might have seen more kind of consumer versus kind of citizen behavior. I'll just quickly share two more examples, kind of more maybe kind of comms-based examples of organizations who have embraced a more citizen way of thinking about membership and are also kind of talking about it in a big way. Here's an example from outside the environmental sector or movement. Co-op Group, who's also a former client of ours, they've recently, you may have noticed, undertaken a major rebrand, or kind of repositioning, I should say, and everything from TV ads down to in-store things like this, that have put the members absolutely at the heart of its brand and how it tells its story. So, Co-op is aware that the Co-op members card has to mean something more than just a loyalty discount card. All the positive things they do in a kind of CSR, kind of ethical trading way, that's also being done by their competitors as well. So while lower prices for members are still very important, they're really stressing the importance of member ownership and member agency here in these communications, kind of really putting it kind of front and center. So there's an example of how a large organization can sort of do that. The second one, I'll share, we talked already about RSPB a little bit. We worked extensively with them over the years to help them reimagine membership and make it more participatory and hands-on. And just a small example of this, how in terms of how the RSPB communicates, we really love this, that they have a members thank you week each year where they celebrate, their 1.2 million members, and not just saying thank you for funding our work, although that is important, but also thanking them for how they sort of pitch in and roll up their sleeves to actually lobby for change, take action in their neighborhoods and communities, or kind of take part in like citizen science projects, like the Big Garden Bird Watch, for example. So yeah, again, just two examples there of how some organizations are kind of communicating and reframing to their communications what membership means beyond this kind of transactional donor type relationship. Okay, as promised, we'll stop there to ask you a question. I think in the chat you should be shared shortly a link to a Slido. I am also going to attempt to share my screen, and I'm going to ask you to contribute to this by saying where. Give me 1 second. I'm kind of trying to walk and chew gum here. Where has your work felt stuck in the consumer story? First of all, thinking about places you work, your organization at the moment, where has that relationship kind of felt stuck in the consumer story in terms of how you spoke to members or supporters or other people, or how the organizations thought about them? The two participants typing already. We'll take about 1.5 minutes for that, and then we'll move on to the citizen bit. Oh, yeah, lots of people typing. Products feeling owned by fundraising teams. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, no journey. Yeah, you sign up for membership and that's it. There's no extra ask to get connected. Yeah, not able to reach the audiences. Yeah, not communicating about what members are doing. Storytelling, of course. Granting license SSSI. Yeah. Oh, I'm not sure what that means, but maybe and does. Yeah, local authority. Yes, big thing. We would do a lot of work with local authorities as well. That's a huge. Oh, there's so many here. Yeah, value for money. As a visitor attraction, being able to talk about casual work is difficult. So that's not hard to know how to support all the members, because members do use it for different things. Absolutely. Finding the right amount of time and resource to engage with members internally. You also have to engage with the public externally. No,
we have a lot of
strategy. Yeah, there's loads. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That sense that sometimes all of the energy around membership goes into acquisition and bringing members in, and actually there's sort of relatively little there to really think about how do you mobilize members and talk to different groups within membership to one another.
Excellent. Yeah, no dedicated membership officer. So yeah, they're not setting up on that triangle to have someone looking after that. Not giving members opportunity to do anything. Right. Okay. We'll stop there. If I can pause it there. Thank you. That is fantastic. And now bear with me while I kind of go backstage and I'll set up. Hopefully this works. Yeah. When has your work felt more citizen? What are the positive examples when you've really seen members or supporters, stakeholders, kind of use your organization as a platform to make change? Or go ahead. Some people are typing already. I should have had the countdown theme tune or something. See what we got.
Oh, it's exciting.
Yeah, having more say in consultations. Yeah,
Nice
meeting members face to face. A volunteer-led walk. Yeah, I love that. Members Day. Yeah, gathering people together. Yeah, grassroots conservation efforts. Team Wilder. Yes. Yeah, lots of kind of large events. Yeah, lots of face to face people mentioning, which is great. Yeah, more community-led projects. Yeah, when people share their story, really want it out there. People are proud of what they've done, and you're giving them a platform to tell their stories. I think is a really important one as well. It was a really simple one as well. pop-up meetings, yeah, thanking members for actions they've taken. Nature Recovery Network, people show what they're doing. Citizen science, asking to write to MPs. Wow, there's loads. This is great. There's loads. This is loads. Fantastic. Awards for members voted for by members. Yeah, I like that. And members' choice awards. Influence of works mentioned with the audience. Yeah. Yeah. Awards, networking. So yeah, a lot of things here around recognition, storytelling, and I think a big thing around kind of face-to-face meeting, or at least gathering people together. Yeah, bring people together in person, creating networks. And again, communication, I think, has a kind of huge kind of role to play. Now, one person typing, we'll wait for you, and then we'll carry on.
That theme of kind of how you connect members to members, which sometimes isn't thought about enough, is such a big one, and one which we actively want to explore over the next few years.
Excellent. Right, so I'm going to stop the poll there, but that's really fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Just find myself. Okay, great. So I'll hand over to Anna now. We'll describe a bit about how we started to think around how organizations can actually kind of make that shift, kind of do less of the consumer and more of the citizen.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you. So anticipating me bringing back up the slides. So yes, practically, how do you move into a citizen story? And often, we get stuck. Sometimes we find ourselves kind of straddling all three, that we've got parts of ourselves that feel a bit stuck in a subject story. Some feel very consumer and perhaps kind of dominated by the transactional. And we've got some sort of green shoots of being a citizen. But these are from work that we've done over the last 10 years, and all started with a collaborative innovation project that we did 10 years ago. We've developed and been working with these 3 principles of participatory membership. And those are purpose, platform, and prototype. Purpose is all around how do we really communicate a clear mission that our members can step into. So again, this isn't a mission where an organization is kept as the hero. It's about saying, this is what we're all working towards. This is where we're trying to get to. This is our shared vision. And this is where we are along that path to getting there. Platform is all about that idea of how do we really find ways to work with members, not just for them. How can it not just be about creating a sort of a passive product where people might receive a membership magazine every quarter and choose to visit or not visit depending on what your offer is, but really actually finding ways of saying what are the meaningful ways that we can work with members, and members can organize around this mission or mobilize. What does that look like, and how can we play it? Often we talk about that kind of first or middle ground of participation in the middle. Kind of, we often have these light touch ways of involving, like join to become a member or donate, these quite heavy sort of governance, come to an AGM, and there's a really fertile middle ground in the middle. And finally, that prototype. How do we know that you can't flick a switch to kind of step into system ways of working overnight? So how do we build energy for experimenting for new ways of working? I'm just going to talk a little bit to each of these and the questions we've been holding and what we've found practically makes a difference. So we move on one slide. Oh, yeah, sorry, brilliant. So yeah, just getting into that sense of purpose, the question that we've been holding and working consistently with organizations over the last 10 years has been around how can membership become a relationship that's rooted in purpose, not just a transactional product. And that's all about kind of recognizing that while there's nothing wrong with having transactional benefits, there is obviously such a value that comes from that kind of emotional exchange, an emotional component to value. So people feeling part of a cause, feeling connected to other people, feeling like you're making a difference are huge benefits. And sometimes they're kind of put in the shadow of some of the more immediate transactional ones. And it's saying, how can we bring both to the fore? How do you make purpose really central to how you communicate? So again, casting people in that mission with you. And it's something that you always return back to and communicate on and say where what you're making progress towards, and even what's been difficult as well, that kind of level of really making people in the mission with you. It sounds like lots of you have done lots of really great work in reflecting on your purpose and how it relates to activities with those kind of in-person events and thank yous. But that stuff is obviously so important, and it's also finding ways to measure purpose. So if your purpose becomes perhaps not just about making a tangible difference to the environment, which is obviously the end goal. Beneath that, if you see your role as being to empower people to be able to take more actions to do that or to influence, how are you finding ways to measure that? How are you finding ways to measure how much people feel like they can make a difference, how much they feel like they have agency to do change? So kind of finding ways to measure purpose and measuring how you're affecting people in that mission as well is really important. I see there's a couple of raised hands. We will get on to questions. We're leaving time for sure. We will. And then just to get into that second principle, platform, the question we've been asking here is how can members really become participants in purpose and not sort of passive supporters? There's obviously to become a member is in itself an act of support and is an action, but sort of within that, once you've stepped into membership, what can people do? What does that look like? Someone's talking about how the kind of journey just ends, and that's quite a common story. So how might there be different ways of people taking action that suit the different range of people that have come into the mission? And so practically that means that sort of shifting a mindset from consultation, whereby you as an organization might have got 90% of the way with an idea and you're effectively saying, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you agree? Into one which is much more co-creation. So someone had a really nice example there of kind of member voted ideas or initiatives or awards voted for by members. So how might you be able to give real moments of agency to people to shape how you're responding to things? Recognizing that is kind of that creating a shared platform based on a shared purpose is going to require different ways of working and different processes. So there's a need for greater being able to kind of facilitate some of those conversations, and that's a muscle that needs to be built. And there might be a need for different structures, different kind of tools that might support members talking to members, having more of that sort of community element to what you're offering, so people can help each other take actions in their local setting. So just recognizing that there's a whole sort of it's not just a communication shift, there's a shift underneath it around how you're enabling people. And designing that range of participation opportunities. I spoke a little bit about a middle. Sometimes we get stuck on either ends of the spectrum, and how can we sort of draw upon that fertile middle ground, whether it be people sharing stories, as was one of the examples, or taking part in citizen science. But there's a huge range of ways that people can help, whether it be sharing their lived experience, sharing their ideas, sharing their insights, sharing their networks and promoting things. There are lots of things that people can do, and sometimes we only think about a few ways of doing that, or a few ways into helping a mission. And finally, that third principle is around prototyping. So it's just in recognition that it's not easy to switch ways of working overnight. And a lot of what we find is that organizations have got kind of stuck in a longer way of in a plan, do, review cycle. So you spend a long time planning. It can feel very high risk, especially with something as important as membership often is to an organization, to make it somewhere that you can innovate and experiment, because it feels like it could be costly, or you're really worried about off-putting members. But actually that question of how can we build energy for new ways of working is a really important one. How do we move to that slightly more kind of prototyping, make, measure, learn approach, whereby we can try things quickly, and if we need to, fail quickly and learn from them quickly. And it's been our experience that sort of involving members in that wherever possible is hugely beneficial. It's really beneficial to members who feel really involved, and it's a real we've done this a lot with RSPB. Members are really grateful to be brought into those early questions, and actually really understanding of that you can't do everything at once. And so really bringing people into that conversation early about what you might do and how membership might change, or how people might support the mission in different ways, has been really beneficial for the organization and really beneficial for members. And finding that reducing the risk of experimenting. How are there little parts that you could experiment in, improve the concept without risking the whole thing?
Yeah, great. And so just I guess final slide from us before we ask you another question and go to Q&A. as we said, we've been working with this model for 10 years now, this kind of 3Ps model. And there are some kind of new questions that have been emerging along the way that we're now keen to explore again with organizations in a kind of collaborative way. First, around purpose, I mean, as Anna says, we've really seen like the extent to which very powerful and kind of long-standing relationships can be created whenever membership, like not just reflects, but actually kind of meaningfully fuels people's sense of kind of personal purpose and identity. So we're now kind of asking, like, how can participatory membership actually nourish and grow members' own sense of the kind of agency and purpose, like not just kind of reflect their values, so to speak, or be an outlet for their values. How does it actually help them to grow as people? And yeah, in terms of platform, again, we see again and again in our work when we ask members, when we work collaboratively with members to say, how do you want membership to look like in your organization? They almost always say they want to have membership create more kind of trusted human connections with other people who kind of share their ideals and their values and their interests, and to actually kind of build that kind of like self-directed kind of capability, kind of grassroots horizontal organizing base to some extent. So yes, we're now trying to explore like how can membership become a platform, not just for participation in what the organization is doing, but for kind of more sideways peer-to-peer connection and collaboration, and kind of creativity around kind of shared mission, shared purpose. And then finally, around prototype, we work with many organizations to try to adopt this approach of kind of prototyping and not doing, kind of plan, review, learn. But we've seen that it can be very challenging for institutions, larger institutions, legacy institutions, to really introduce these more agile, iterative ways of working. Even when there is a very clear commitment to remanaging membership, that way of working can feel very foreign. So we're now trying to figure out like how can organizations kind of carve out the safe spaces, the kind of structured spaces where you can really try and experiment with new membership opportunities, new propositions, new ways of doing membership, without sort of setting alarm bells ringing or hairs racing among either the organization itself or with the existing membership or volunteers. So yeah, again, just thinking more about like how can you have a kind of members lab where you can really experiment with that a bit more. Yeah, great. So thank you. I think we're going to move on to one more question. We have one more question to ask you in our Slido. I don't know if you want to share the link again. So really, yes, last reflections, few minutes before we go to Q&A, is basically what excites you most about what we've said, if anything, about kind of reframing members as kind of citizens rather than consumers. Like, what's the most exciting thing it could create for your organization? So I think everyone should be in. The poll is active. Oh, I need to share my screen. Excuse me, 1 second. Okay, so you should be able to see that. Okay, it's all working. Fantastic. So yeah, what's the prize, you think? What's the big thing you could aim for? We'll be really tight here because we want to make sure we have time for Q&A. Just give it a minute or so. Yeah, more engagement, of course, more involved in the organization, celebration of collective achievements. Yeah, making the shared goal more achievable. Yeah, run by community-led working. Yeah, ask them how they want to be involved rather than trying to figure out how to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we always try to co-create this with members. I just say whenever we work with clients to organizations to help them become more member focused, we get members in the room to figure that out rather than kind of guessing from the outside. Yeah, building community. Yeah, this is a really big one. Yeah, being able to experiment without making it feel like it's going to be a risk, I think, is really, really critical. And again, something we're still trying to crack, and we'd love to kind of do more from. Yeah, doing something ideas for members and supporters. We have this concept we talk about, kind of a participatory, a kind of purposeful question to really embrace the citizen story. To ask yourself, what is it that we're trying to achieve as an organization that is so big we can't achieve it on our own? So as soon as you start asking that, you realize you need more people. When you reframe it that way, suddenly lots more opportunities can open up. Yeah, more engaging experience for value supporters, higher retention rates, of course. Yeah, more chance to collaborate effectively towards shared goals, resulting in bigger positive change. Yeah, building community, which is helpful for society as a whole. Yeah, absolutely, not just for the organization, but that's helpful building participatory muscle as a whole. Okay, we'll stop there, but yeah, hearing more diverse range of people. We'll stop there. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. And we will now finish and go to Q&A. I'm going to look at the Q&A.
I thought
Yep, yeah.
Rhiannon's been very patient because you've had your hand raised, and I'm sorry, yeah, we wanted to sort of get through and then get to Q&A. But yes, do you have any advice for how a smaller organisation with limited capacity in their team can adopt an effective citizen approach towards membership? I guess and I know it's difficult when you might be sort of more of a one-man band in trying to organise those things, would be just how important prioritizing would be. So how might you be able to, perhaps as people are talking about, involve a group of members as sort of representative as you can in helping to come with you and have some initial conversations with you about how membership might shift, how might it become something that could be even more effective for the mission, how might it be something that becomes even more engaging and rewarding to be part of. So have that conversation with members perhaps initially about what that might look like, and then there are some really nice simple tools for them being able to go out to more of your membership base to kind of work out what people would most value and what you could prioritize. We like something called All Our Ideas. It's just a really basic tool, but you can just get a simple sense of maybe where to direct your effort if it's limited, but also trying to do that in a way that feels really participatory and it feels like that conversation has come with members. So we've done that to some effect before, but yeah, it tends to be definitely still involve members, start with some initial conversations, maybe use some simple tools to help spread that out a bit more widely and get a sense of where do you put your efforts, especially if that energy is kind of limited in a small team. Oliver, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, just to say that as a smaller organization, it's possible that you might be better placed to kind of adopt a more kind of prototyping approach, kind of try small things and see how well they work. It might be easier to do than in a large organization. So yeah, I'd say take that approach. Fraser asks, does charging for services break the citizenship model and revert members or others to consumers? No, it does not. It does not. Citizens still consume. Having a kind of financial relationship or kind of service transactional relationship embedded within a citizen relationship does not necessarily subvert that or limit that. An example that we've already shared was Co-op Group, which is essentially based around common ownership and trade and transaction and commerce around cooperative principles, where there is still kind of core kind of citizen principles, ideas of member control and member impact and kind of member voice, all embedded within that. I mean, it's a really good thing to flag, I think, because I think that there's always a risk that when the focus becomes too much on the charging of the services and that service delivery thing, that presents a risk maybe to the citizen model, but it certainly does not break it. I don't think. Anna, do you agree or anything like that?
I know, completely agree. Yeah, that you can offer transactional benefits and still have a citizen-based, value-based relationship. Absolutely, that's possible. I think the danger comes when it's sold on a transactional basis and then you try and retrofit it into a citizen one. That can be difficult because if people have bought membership on a sort of 3-month free offer, it can be difficult to sort of to shift that into it's about so much more than that. It's about a mission. Actually, it costs us pretty. All those things become difficult. Whereas, actually, if you start presenting membership as that it's a chance to both come into this mission and help make it possible, and it's a chance to get closer to this thing that you love and benefit from it. That's fine. People can absolutely hold those two things together.
Excellent, thank you. I think we've got time for one more. So an anonymous attendee asks, at a previous organization, one of the biggest barriers of bridging the triangle as a communicator to members is getting those stories from the team that do the work on the ground. Any tips on how you get buy-in from those that we need the info from? So I assume you're referring to the employees, kind of frontline grassroots employees. They always felt we were asking over and over for stories because it was day-to-day work. They felt it wasn't important. I don't want to go. I would just say, again, when we have, part of this is like, how do you actually get the organization as a whole to embrace the citizen story way of working? And I would say when we've done this in the past, we've always sought to bring together not just the members into the conversations around how we're going to do this kind of citizen thing, but also how you bring in kind of frontline staff to kind of understand, contribute to, and therefore buy into the story as well. So that becomes less of a kind of foreign ask to them to be asked to do it. It's not just an extra bit of work. They actually kind of want to like see the bigger picture and celebrate that work. Anna, do you have any kind of kind of practical?
Yeah, I think that's right. From a just like to take the example of the National Trust, that was definitely one of the challenges, and there was a sort of one of the real areas of focus of the work of trying to reposition it was looking at that role of wardens. So people who worked in the countryside and protecting the countryside had been called wardens. They were dressed in sort of camouflage gear, so it was actually really difficult to see them when they're out and about. And it was kind of their job to sort of protect places from people. And part of the job was actually to really engage that group of staff and say, you're the people who have the most information about what this work looks like and how do you look after those places. Can we bring some of that to the fore? Can we make engaging with people more part of your role and your job, and what does that look like? And that started out a whole sort of work where they transitioned from wardens into rangers. Rangers had a really different role profile actually around engaging with people, and we'd run events around their work and what they were doing and what it looked like, the day-to-day of conservation looked like. And they also sort of dressed in bright red so people could see them. But I guess that became quite a sort of a really important example in the work, and it was about sort of picking a group of staff to particularly work with around how could you come into this change that we're making, how could you be at the forefront of that, how could people benefit from that, given you've got such unique, powerful stories and information and knowledge. So if there was one practical thing is, are there a group of staff that you might start with who could help with that? There are a particular group that you might really bring in, and a lot of that was really having the conversation with them about what would you think it would look like if we were to make this change, what do you think you might do differently? Could you start somewhere with one group and then that kind of spirals out to others?
Okay, we're 3 minutes over, so I think we have to say thank you, Anna. Do you just want to quickly mention our Collaborative Innovation that's coming up?
Yes, yeah. So we are, as Oliver was saying, we started out looking at membership over 10 years ago, and we've been exploring those questions. And but we've also, over the context of doing all that work, surface those new questions that feel really important around how can participatory membership sort of nourish members' own sense of purpose and identity. How can membership become more of a platform for peer-to-peer connection? How do we really create those safe spaces? So we're going to be running another collaborative innovation starting in January next year to explore exactly what that looks like. And that means bringing together a cohort of organizations, all membership organizations, all exploring those challenges. We'll do some upfront kind of strategy and theory around what does this really look like? What could it look like in practice? And then we spend some the rest of months of this year, it's a 9-month program, exploring what does it look like to put that into practice. Where could we make little experiments? Where could we start making changes? And the benefit of those programs, and it was hugely beneficial when we run it with membership before, is bringing together membership organizations who are holding similar challenges but are trying different things. So you really get the benefit of learning from one another. So you're helping each other with your kind of individual challenges, but you're also learning a lot as a whole about membership. So we're running one of those again. We've got some really great organizations signed up, but there are a few places. So if you are interested in that, if that sounds like something you might want to be part of, then please drop us a line and let us know. Maybe I should put an email into the chat. I'm going to put our co-founder, Irene, into the chat if I can. And I'll just say, if that sounds like something you want to know a bit more about, then please just get in touch. Because we're really excited about this chance to explore some of the new questions that have been coming up. Do let us know. Thank you, everyone.
And please enjoy the rest of the conference, no matter where you are, whether you're in person or online. And take care.
Great. Thank you.